Hey there, Amplifiers. We have a great episode for you here today. And if you own a business and you want to know how you can structure it in a way that you can grow without you, then you're in the right place. Today, we have with us Mike Harvey. He's the founder of Business Growth Domination. And Mike is an experienced entrepreneur that has started, grown, and exited multiple businesses. And not only that, he's been able to structure these businesses in a way that he can take off multiple weeks without that business needing him so that it can run smoothly without him. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Manny, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited too. Mike and I met in a Facebook group, and one of the cool things about Mike that I loved that I saw in that group, he led with, providing a ton of value. And that's one of the things that's near and dear to my heart, givers gain, really leading with helping other people. And that's one of the things that drew me to Mike. Today, what I wanted to chat about, because you and I have similar backgrounds, one of the things that I know that you have a lot of experience in is service-based businesses. And one of the things that we've seen with businesses that we've worked with is that sometimes those owners are a little reluctant to do the things that they need to do to grow their business. And I wanted to talk to you today a little bit about how these, service providers, whether they be an advisor or some other professional service provider, can, be more proactive and take more action to grow their business.
Yeah, before we hit record here, we were talking about selling and all of those things. Is it okay to kind of go down that avenue?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Yeah. And, I deal with this with people as well. And it's like, there's kind of like a paradigm shift that needs to take place to enable you to sell easier and better. And like the end result is like realizing that you're doing people a favor, like you're doing them a service by selling, right? But you also don't like start out like always like pushing sales, right? Like, and everyone thinks of the stereotypical used car salesman or like someone from Amway or something, like come in and, hey, buy my stuff, buy my business opportunity, right? How many of us have experienced that? I know I've experienced it many times. In fact, like when I first started in my business career, like that was one of the things, like, oh, well, I guess I should get into this multi-level marketing thing. And not to knock that, right? Like, I think there are people that do it right, people that do it well are doing a good thing, right? But when you look at selling, and this is something you and I talked about, Manny, and feel free to interrupt me at any point too, because I'll just go and I'll ramble, man. But understand, like, no one's going to give you, like, unless you're conning them, right? And like, we all know that we're not, like, hopefully, like, I'm not teaching con men, Mandy's not teaching con men, like how to be con men, right? But like, no one's going to give you money for something they don't see more value in than the money they're giving you in exchange for that thing, right? So if you have a product, a service, whatever it is that you feel will make a difference in people's business or in people's life, whatever that is. And I know a lot of your people, Manny, are advisors, the CPAs or financial advisors or other types of advisors. All of them, and you and I are both advisors in a functional capacity as well. What you're doing very likely could change someone's life or change someone's business. I'm not going to personally give someone something of value, for example, my money, that I don't value what they're giving me in exchange more. So we like to look at sales as it's something that you're doing to people. I'm selling something to someone, but when you and it takes a while to make this mental shift. But when you realize the first thing that I said is true, it makes it a lot easier to sell, and it's something that you end up doing for someone.
Right. It becomes an exchange, not just an action that you're doing with someone. And one of the things that I like to bring up, and I'm sure you're a fan of Zig Ziglar too, where he talks about, if you have an opportunity to help someone out and help them achieve something that they're looking for, and you don't offer it, it becomes a disservice. And I think it's nice to be able to flip that on its head, because so many people are like scared to help someone. But what happens when you don't help them and their life is less or is worse off because you didn't do that, and you see them later and something happens? I used to do a lot of BNI networking, and there was a life insurance sales rep in there. And she had said, one of the ways that she got over, telling people about life insurance was one time she had held back and then something happened to someone and they weren't protected. And from that point forward, she's like, I see now that if I don't offer this and someone needs it, it's a disservice that I haven't at least made it a good-hearted effort to educate them on what their options are there.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot easier for people to understand logically, like that I'm doing someone a service by selling to them. And like, really, you're doing them it's your moral and ethical obligation if you're providing something of value. And I think pretty much all of your listeners, all of my tribe, like they are doing something, like they feel like they're doing something that's providing value to the world. Most of them wouldn't be doing it if they weren't, right? So why on one hand do we feel that we have something valuable to offer, but on the other hand, we feel like if we're giving it to someone, we're doing them a disservice?
Yeah. And I think a lot of that comes from, personal experience. Maybe it's a time that someone felt like they were duped, but I think it's the difference between persuading someone and manipulating, right? Because if the difference there is intent, and if your intent is to help someone, to serve them, then you are persuading them, helping them to make that right decision, encouraging them, versus, if you have some ulterior motive, then, that could be manipulation.
Yeah. And I like to look at it as, Manny, and I kind of stole this, if you will, from Myron Golden, which I know you know who Myron is. There's a big difference between convincing someone to buy something and persuading someone to buy something. Really, like it's nearly impossible to convince them, right? And convincing is getting someone to do something that they don't want to do for your reasons, rather than persuasion is helping someone to make a decision that they do want to make for their reasons.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's like any kind of conversation where you're helping them get perspective on something they may not have been able to have seen previously. As we're talking about, advisors and people that work with business owners, why is it important for them to shift from being that service provider that's trading time for money to moving more towards being something of greater value, of an advisor of something that's a little more different than other people in their industry?
Like really in short, I'll give you a short version and then the long version after, but in short, it's all about leverage, right? And a lot of your audience understands leverage when it comes to finances, but time is our most sacred and most scarce resource. We can get more money, we can't get more time, right? So like we need to be applying leverage to time also. So a lot, and this is how I started. I'm sure it's how you started, Manny. It's how a lot of people start, like they're trading dollars for hours. And maybe you get that up to a point where you're trading a lot of dollars for your hours, but it's still, it's not ultimately not a scalable model. You can add on people and do all that. And then there comes other issues with hiring that I've faced. I'm sure you've faced. I'm sure many of your listeners have faced. But it's how can I do something in a way that rather than people paying me for my time, people are paying me for my knowledge, right? And that's leverage. So if I can, and I'm doing some of it now. And again, like part of this goes back to like we were talking about before, like serving first, seek to serve first, and then the sales will almost be automatic. But like I'm doing something right now with my audience that we're going through a free training on, some stuff. But we have a whole bunch of people coming to that training. And then later, hopefully some of them will enroll in some of our group programs. But instead of me saying, well, you're in that program, I'm going to charge you, $350 an hour to be part of that program. It's results based, right? So we look at what is the outcome that we're striving to achieve. And then I can go on and on about this, but basically your question is, why should we become an advisor rather than just trading dollars for hours? And again, it's about leverage, right? The more people we can serve. And you brought up a great person, and I love Zig, by the way. But he said, if you can have anything you want in life if you just seek to, or if you just help enough other people get what they want. And like becoming that advisor, and especially if you become an advisor on a one-to-many role, that's one of the best ways that you can serve more people.
Exactly. And that one-to-many is something that I bring up a lot in a lot of different situations. I was talking to a app developer. He's actually a founder that has a app company that helps people find properties, and he was looking to grow his business, and he was, looking for the onesie twosies, like, how do I get in front of this person? And I said, why don't you look to get in front of a group of them versus one? And that same leverage principle is what you're talking about. It's instead of doing something once and having one return, you're doing it once and having many returns. And the same, process or principle is in play with productizing those businesses. And I think a lot of advisors miss out on that opportunity as well, where they could create something once that maybe a lower tier client could use that they could sell. And this would free them up to spend more of that premium time with their top tier clients.
Yeah. And, that we do a lot of stuff, and, I'm going to say a term that you're familiar with, but your audience may not be in the high ticket stuff. What that means is, like, typically it's either program or service. And a lot of times it's one of these one-to-many, like we're talking about, that you charge a lot of money for, for a program that you can enroll a whole bunch of people in $5, $10, $15, $20,000. Most of your advisors could easily create a program like that, right? And then what they could do, and again, you 100% agree with you, record that program, and then you can do a million different things with that, but you have it delivered live to your people. And then on the back end, and then this comes an area where you can really scale back into the service that your advisors provide. I can put you through a paid or even a free program that on the back end, I can charge you way more than I would have been able to charge you if I hadn't put that on the front end.
Right. You're almost educating them on how to do business with you, right? Because you're aligning their values, aligning your personality with them. They get to know and like and trust you and build that rapport. So by the time that it's time to take the next step, they're ready to do that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of advisors probably understand the concept of, putting on a seminar, putting on a workshop or something like that. This would be something very similar to that, but you can take that same principle, that same model, and I imagine you probably teach this as well, Manny, and deliver it in an online. So then rather than, hey, I can only serve the people in my local market, like we can serve people nationally. And depending on what you're advising on, what your specialty is, then you can, instead of saying, well, I serve people in the local Seattle market, for example, or the Tampa market, or whatever that market may be, you say, change your, what we would call a niche, right? Are you people familiar with that niche?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't have to go into explaining that, but change your niche from being, we serve Tampa, to like, we serve auto mechanics, for example, right? Well, if you're the only advisor that specializes in auto mechanics and you do it nationwide, you can charge a lot more for that. And you can put a very specialized program together for those people as well. And you understand their language and you understand everything about them.
Hey there, this is Kenny from Growth Amplifiers, here to ensure you get your awesome ideas into action to grow and improve your business and achieve your full potential. Take the first step by visiting growthamplifiers.com and clicking the Start Here button. Take the assessment to get your personalized score. Then select from free resources to learn how to improve your score. Don't wait. Be proactive and take action now by visiting growthamplifiers.com and clicking the Start Here button. And always keep on amplifying. Now, let's get back to the show.
Yeah, that's a great point. And luckily, one of the benefits of the pandemic has been that people have kind of let their guard down of doing business outside their area. They're a little more open to virtual interactions, which is kind of given that open opportunity to expand beyond and really focus on the ones that they love to work with and be able to niche down to a specific industry or service area. So I think that's really smart advice to have these advisors to identify who it is they really want to work with and how can they serve that audience better and at a wider range.
Right. And then it goes back to like, you can leverage, that time again. You can like, it makes your marketing a lot simpler. Instead of like, how do I get to all these people? You're like, well, how do I get to this specific group of people? And I can, again, go down this rabbit hole, but look at your customer avatar. What books do they read? What magazines do they subscribe to? What websites are they on? What conferences do they attend? Who do they follow as far as speakers or as far as podcasts or, YouTube channels or whatever? But then you can get really dialed in and be in all the places where that particular customer is going to be.
That's great advice too. And it doesn't take a lot of extra work. A lot of times, as advisors, you're talking to clients, really what it takes is being mindful of the conversations that you're having and having some way to capture that information so that you can use it later. We had a meeting with a client one time, and they had a sales team and a customer service team and a marketing team, but they weren't communicating to one another. And they had all this valuable information that they were gathering, but they weren't sharing it. And I think a lot of businesses have that same opportunity where they're having conversations. They could ask those questions, and people love to talk about themselves. So by asking questions, you're actually endearing yourself to them, and at the same time, learning more about them so that you can find more like them.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the other thing, and, this is so key and, great point. Like the more and more conversations you have, the more you figure out like, okay, so like in our programs, we teach people that your clients, your prospects, they don't buy the transportation, they buy the destination, right? So what is that big result you're getting for them? And like, say we're talking specifically about CPAs, because, it's one that everyone understands. Like, don't sell, hey, we'll do your tax return, a bigger result than that, right? Like, yeah, I need my taxes done, but anybody can do that, air quotes there. But while that's not 100% true, like I can go to the CPA down the street and he can do my taxes, but there's things that, CPA that works specifically with my type of business can do for me, because they understand me, they understand what I want, they understand the results that I really want, that they can speak to that result, but that they can also do things for me that the standard person that just does general business wouldn't be able to do.
Exactly. And that's a great insight that, a lot of times is overlooked. And I think that's really important for those accountants and CPAs. And actually any business owners should really be thinking about is what is that end result that they're providing. Mike, what's one way that you can think of that could help someone on that path of helping them go from having that, the hesitancy to want to do sales to being more proactive about it and overcoming that challenge that they have with doing sales in their business?
Well, I think the first thing is like logically understand it, right? And like start by when you're interacting with salespeople, instead of being like, oh, they're salespeople, like push them away, like embrace them, like learn from them. Yeah, you don't have to buy, right, every time, but I'll talk to salespeople all day long because I can learn something from them from every conversation. Now, a lot of times we'll start it out with, hey, just so we know, I'm going to set the expectation right now. I'm going to this conversation. I don't intend to buy. That doesn't mean that I will never buy, but I still want to, hear what you have to say. So then you set it up from the beginning so you don't feel bad at the end, right? Set proper expectations, but start embracing salespeople. The more you do that, the more that you'll see what you do as selling is good also, right? And then the other thing is, understand, some of the first things I said. One of the things that I neglected to say was, and this is something that I've heard along the way also, there is, and we can dive into this, but there is transformation in the transaction, right? If I go and I, for example, pay, and I don't know what your prices are, Manny, so I'm going to just make something up. But say I pay $10,000 to work with Manny, and he's going to teach me how to add $300,000 in top line revenue to my business over the next year. Like that result makes sense for me, right? Because I spent this, but I'm going to get like 30 times the value for it. But second of all, because I spent that pretty significant sum of money, I'm going to be all in, right? But you already created that transformation inside of me as a person just by the mere fact of me buying in. I have skin in the game.
That's excellent. I heard one person, this is a while back, I was at a conference and I was talking to someone and he had a new program and he spoke to this multi-million-dollar business owner. He said, hey, if I gave you this for free, would do this program? And the business owner said, no, but if you charge me $5,000, I would do it, because people don't value something that's free. And the higher value you put on it, they see that as something that's going to impact them more, that has more credibility. And a lot of times people have that inverse relationship where they want to discount things and bring it down, but it actually ends up hurting them in the long run. So I think that's a great point that you bring up in terms of, if someone's going to invest, they're going to be all in, they're going to be doing what it takes to make it work. And I think that's true for advisors as well. If someone's going to pay them a monthly retainer or recurring fee, they're going to be proactive to follow that advice to a T, because they know in the end, they should be getting what they expect out of that relationship. There's another thing that you talk about, the transformation when a purchase happens on the top end when someone's spending a lot of money. But another way that transformation happens is on the low end. I don't know if you're familiar with Laurel Langmeyer, but she's famous for saying, if you can sell something to someone, even if it's a small thing, go ahead and sell it, because you've changed the relationship. So she's really encourages people to have a book or something that they can sell. And even if, for instance, she talks about on an airplane, an advisor, and in this case, I think it was a financial advisor, sold a book. And then someone else approached him and said, hey, who's working with you with your financial services? And the guy says, I'm already working with someone, just because he had exchanged money to buy that book. But in his mind, he had a relationship with that financial advisor. So if you can start your relationship out with new prospects by encouraging them to take that first step, that's going to change that transformation in their mind in terms of their relationship with you and your business.
Yeah, I see people lose a lot of sales actually is by having too low of a price. I'll give an extreme example for demonstration purposes. If I know that I need heart surgery, right? And I know the typical price for heart surgery is $400,000, $500,000. And I see someone that's selling it for $6,000, I'm never going to go to that person, because something has to be wrong, right? But you can compress and change it. Like maybe what you do isn't life or death. Now it might be life or death of a business, or it might be life of the death of someone's finances, the people you work with, Manny. And maybe, it's not that drastic of a difference, but if I know that my typical advisor cost me, a $5,000 retainer, if I see someone that's charging me like $2,000, what am I missing out on? Like, it makes me raise an eyebrow, right?
Right. It's too good to be true at that point. And you kind of have your radar up and you're a little squeamish. So that makes sense. Well, Mike, I think you've provided some great insights here. As we finish up this interview, I want to leave our listeners with an action that they can take today to help them amplify their business. And since we've been talking about sales and kind of changing that mindset in terms of how they can approach it in a different way, not look at it as sales, but providing value, providing service, what's an action that our listeners can take to amplify their business moving forward?
I think start thinking about what is the result that your service or your product provides, and speak to that. People don't buy the person, the product, the process, the pieces. They buy the result, right? So quit talking about all the little components inside of there, or I'm such a great person, or whatever that is. They'll figure that out along the way, but start talking about the result that you can deliver for your clients.
I love it. Awesome. Mike, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you and connect with you?
Really the best way to jump in there in our Facebook group. We run free trainings on a regular basis around a lot of these concepts we talked about today. MikeHarvey.co/group.
Awesome. We'll put that in the show notes. And Mike, we appreciate you being here today. And thanks for all your insights and look forward to connecting with you again.
Thank you, Manny. It's been a pleasure being here, and I appreciate you having me.
To show your support, take a moment to amplify this message by sharing it online. To connect with me or gain more business growth insights, visit www.growthamplifiers.com. Thank you for your support.